Today on Ag News Daily.
California standards weren't scientific, they were arbitrary, and they were developed without the assistance of veterinarians or pork producers or food safety experts. And so therein lies the challenge. It's just hard to have it.
Well, welcome back to the weekly edition of the Ag News Daily Show. We've got Tanner and Jacie here. How's Jacie doing?
Pretty good, and it's even better when I'm here with you, so pretty fun.
Hey, I was going to say that. Either way, Delaney's not here and we can make fun of her. So all good on that front.
For sure.
You also have here in some of our notes today that it is the National Day of the Cowboy. I kind of half expected you to have a cowboy hat on.
See, I should have done that. I have a pink one at home that I should have scooped up and put on. Maybe it would have been a little bit jarring. I don't know if it would have fit in the frame either, but maybe for next time.
That's right. Well, we know that a lot of our listeners could have used the rain shedding effects of a cowboy hat. We saw several fronts that have delivered multiple rounds of showers and storms across the Midwest this past week. The heaviest activity is in the northwestern region. South of that boundary, rising temperatures are also putting some added stress on these already dry areas. So where a majority of that rain fell, we got quite a bit. The front is now expected to stall over the southeastern U.S. this weekend, keeping those rain chances in the forecast. But we look ahead into next week, and we've got another system that is likely to move in. Also this week, extreme heat warnings and advisories were in effect from central Minnesota all the way to the Gulf Coast, from eastern Nebraska all the way through Ohio. That was according to the National Weather Service. Moving back here into the Central Plains, we saw heavy rain in Kansas earlier this week, which caused a few disturbances that could spark up more storms and pass through. The Southern Plains have stayed mostly hot and dry, but there is a strengthening ridge this weekend that could push future systems north, bringing hotter and drier conditions here in early August. Similarly, the Northern Plains have seen nearly daily showers and storms. That pattern is expected to continue into next week and may push south gradually, moving some of that rainfall further into those northern regions. And again, warmer temperatures. I do feel like here in our area, we've kind of gotten rain every day, even if it wasn't in the forecast.
Yeah, that's how it kind of has been in Nebraska as well. I know corn sweat was a big topic this week as well, looking at headlines and things like that. So that's interesting. Moving on to our crop progress, the USDA's national crop ratings were mixed last week, and this reflected a wide range of weather conditions. Corn conditions held steady at 74% rated good to excellent, and about 56% of the crop reached the silking stage, and 14% was at the dough stage. Both of these are near the 5-year average. Soybean ratings fell 2% to 68% rated good to excellent, and around 62% of the crop is blooming and 26% had started setting pods, and this was close to the average as well. Moving on to the wheat side of things, winter wheat harvest reached 73%, slightly ahead of the usual 72% for this time of year. Ending things off, spring wheat ratings dropped to 52% rated good to excellent, down 2% from the previous week, and about 87% of the crop has headed so far last week. So some good progress there with all the weather going on. Still pretty steady, so I think things are going well.
Yeah, I know we're going to talk a little bit about diseases coming up in the corn crop, but as far as crop ratings go here, it'll be interesting to see when those combines roll. We did see on Wednesday this week, the White House announced from President Trump that he signed a trade agreement with Japan that will lower tariffs on Japanese auto imports from 27.5% down to 15%. The deal also reduced the planned August 1st tariffs on other Japanese goods from 25% down to 15%. According to the U.S. Treasury Secretary, Scott said Japan received lower auto rate tariffs in exchange of offering a $550 billion financing and investment package. The investment package provided through the Japanese government-affiliated institutions will target sectors like pharmaceuticals, semiconductors to help strengthen the U.S. supply chains. As a part of this agreement, Japan will also purchase 100 Boeing aircraft and increase defense spending with U.S. firms from $14 billion to $17 billion annually. This deal also includes Japan's decision to stop to drop additional safety tests on U.S. imported vehicles. However, some U.S. automakers have raised concerns that the reduced tariffs on Japanese vehicles could put North American-built cars at a competitive disadvantage. The U.S. is continuing trade negotiations with countries including Britain, Vietnam, Indonesia, and the European Union as a new round of tariffs is scheduled to take effect on August 1st. So no shyness around that August 1st date, and hopefully we'll have more to report next week.
Yeah, we'll have to keep an eye on that. And Japan kind of stuck out to me because I'm headed there in December, so that's fun to look at.
Absolutely.
Moving ahead, Union Pacific, the largest U.S. freight railroad, is in early talks to acquire Norfolk Southern. The proposed merger would create the largest railroad in North America that would link the East and West Coast through a single network. The decisions began in the first quarter of 2025, and that's according to a source familiar with the talks who was not authorized to speak publicly. If completed, the merger would mark the first coast-to-coast single-line freight rail system in the whole United States. Union Pacific CEO Jim Vena said a transcontinental merger would benefit shippers by reducing delays in Chicago, which is a common transfer point. The proposed deal is expected to face review from the Surface Transportation Board, and the board did approve the Canadian Pacific and Kansas City Southern merger all the way back in 2023, but that was the first rail merger approved in 20 years, and it involved the two smallest major freight railroads. It's unclear whether a Union Pacific and Norfolk Southern merger will get the green light, but analysts say the review process could take up to 22 months, and major shippers are likely to raise concerns about less competition. These talks come as interest in the rail industry consolidation grows, and Mike Steenhoek, who leads the Soy Transportation Coalition, says past mergers have led to more deals. He believes this one can encourage big carriers like BNSF and CSX to consider merging as well. So we'll have to keep an eye on this and see if they come together or if they're staying separate for now.
Well, it seems like our weekly edition of Secretary Rollins' news and announcements is here to be shared with you, but in a surprising move, Secretary Rollins announced a major reorganization of the USDA yesterday. The goal, according to the agency, is to refocus the agency on its core mission, supporting the farmers, ranchers, and foresters. Over the past 4 years, the USDA workforce grew by 8% and salaries rose nearly 15%. However, officials say that growth came without improved service. Earlier this year, Secretary Rollins exempted 52 job categories from the federal hiring freeze. These included roles in wildfire response, food inspection, and public safety. Following a formal review, the agency found overspending, underused office space in Washington, and billions in deferred building maintenance. The reorganization consists of 4 pillars that have been shared with us. They want to ensure the size of the USDA's workforce aligns with the available financial resources and ag priorities. They want to bring the USDA closer to its customers. They're looking to eliminate management layers and bureaucracy and consolidate those redundant support functions. So with the latest reorganization, some employees may be relocated, but those positions will not be cut. To lower costs and improve services, many DC-based staff will move to 5 regional hubs in Raleigh, Kansas City, Indianapolis, Fort Collins, and Salt Lake City. About 2,000 employees will still remain on the National Capital Region's territory. According to this, there will be additional cost savings by using several USDA buildings in DC that will be closed or repurposed. This is the first phase of a multi-month process. According to the announcement, of course, more information will be shared with the affected offices in the coming weeks, as this is a critical move. All critical services will continue without interruption.
I like the idea of more USDA professionals being closer to farmers and getting them out more in the country. So that's something that stuck out to me. Last week, President Trump also nominated Dr. Julie Callahan as the chief agricultural negotiator at the U.S. Trade Representative's office. It confirmed Callahan will replace Doug McCallum from the previous administration. She currently serves as Assistant Trade Representative for Agricultural Affairs and has nearly a decade of trade experience. The chief agriculture negotiator is a key person to advancing U.S. market access, especially during these times with amid tariff disputes. farm groups quickly endorsed Callahan's nomination, calling her a skilled negotiator who understands the importance of strong export markets. The American Farm Bureau had something to say, and they said, quote, she will hit the ground running with her experience in trade agreements. IDFA president and CEO Michael Dykes said, quote, having known and worked closely with Dr. Callahan for many years, I can attest to her deep understanding of complex global issues affecting American food and agriculture. So I'm excited for her, and I think she'll really step into this role and prove herself there.
It's a big role, certainly. Another gentleman that's filling a big role in Nebraska is the governor, Jim Pillen. I had the pleasure, JC, to be on a podcast with him, the 93 podcast, about, a month or so ago. I got to learn his personality. But as a hog farmer himself, perspective is certainly not shy for the ag producers in the state of Nebraska, and neither is this headline. The Nebraska governor signed a bill banning lab-grown meat being sold within the state of Nebraska. The ceremonial signing took place, as fittingly, on Thursday at the Shamrock Locker in O'Neill, Nebraska. This new law prohibits the production, distribution, and sale of cultivated or lab-grown meat within the state of Nebraska. It builds on a 2024 executive order that barred state agencies from purchasing such products. Governor Pillen said Nebraska plays a key role in feeding global markets and emphasized the state's focus on the tradition of agriculture. According to his office, Nebraska processed 6.8 million head of cattle in 2024 and exported over $2 billion worth of meat. Governor Pillen said, quote, the idea of a meat substitute makes no sense and only serves to undercut the livelihood of our producers. If somebody wants meat from a bioreactor, they can buy it through Amazon. They won't find it on our store shelves. This new law will take effect on September 3rd. It's also one of those that follows suit, I believe, earlier in this year. Not quoted from this article. This is off of recollection of my own, that I believe there's an additional tax on sugars and sodas and maybe another unhealthy product within the state of Nebraska as well. So certainly a focus on food happening in Nebraska this year.
Yeah, and I love to see that, and hopefully things will keep rolling through the end of the year. So since we had a Nebraska story, I guess we had to keep it fitting by including Iowa in here. Cora, a joint venture between Minnesota-based Cargill and Germany-based Helm, has opened a $300 million bio-industrial facility in Eddyville, Iowa. The plant will produce Kira, which is a plant-based chemical made from dent corn and will be sourced from farmers within a 100-mile radius of the facility. Kira serves as a renewable alternative to fossil-derived materials and will be used in a wide range of consumer products. CEO John Veldhouse says it's a key ingredient in stretch fabrics, as well as products in the personal care, automotive, electronics, and packing industries. Veldhouse says the company aims to create new markets for U.S. corn and reduce reliance on fossil fuels. He also notes that Core will export Kira globally, competing directly with petroleum and coal-based materials from China. So production began on Tuesday, and shipments will move by rail, and consumer goods containing Kira are expected to reach the market in spring of 2026. I think that'll be exciting to see what consumer products that they're talking about that might feature this new Kira derivative.
Yeah, it's fascinating. We, as Farm for Profit, got the opportunity to interview several corn grower members at the NASCAR race last year in Newton. And it was a lot of fun to hear about the technologies that they were all working together on and unified. So it's neat to see this come out. Now, the next headline isn't as neat. Tar spot spotted. The latest tar spot count has been confirmed now in 33 Iowa counties. So far this growing season, this is according to the latest map put out by the Crop Protection Network. The disease was first reported in the Corn Belt in 2015, has been present in Iowa since 2016. This season, positive cases have also been reported in 24 Nebraska counties, 18 Missouri counties, 17 in Illinois, 10 in Wisconsin, 7 in Kansas, 3 in Minnesota, and other affected states include Indiana, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and New York. The Iowa Extension agronomist Gentry Sorensen says crops in northwest Iowa are in late vegetative or R2 stages, which is a key window for fungicide applications that can target tar spot. Multi-state research does show that fungicides are the most effective and economical when applied in that R2 to R3 phase, even if the disease appears earlier in the season. I know lots of TikToks and Twitter posts being made about scouting for this. Unfortunately, it's here.
Yeah, we'll have to keep an eye on it. And I've been watching that crop protection network map like a hawk. So hopefully we can see some resolvement going from there. But we've also been keeping an eye on the New World screwworm. And Texas Agriculture Commissioner Sid Miller announced new efforts to control the reemergence of this pest near the U.S. border. In partnership with the USDA, the Texas Department of Agriculture is bringing back swarmler bait. This bait is a synthetic attractant used with insecticides to target adult screwworm flies. Miller said, quote, "The screwworm isn't just a Texas problem. We cannot wait for sterile flies alone to turn the tide. So that's why we are applying Swarmler. The bait specifically attracts screwworms and blowflies and does not harm beneficial insects." Swarmler was first used in the 1960s to help eliminate this parasite, and the new effort builds on the earlier success to address this current threat that is happening now.
Yeah, that is unfortunate, but there is movement at least. The NCGA has headlines for us to share this week, as the National Corn Growers Association is now teaming up with Ag Data Transparent to help farmers better understand what carbon market contracts look like. The NCGA says the rapid growth of carbon programs in agriculture brings big opportunities, but also big-time risks. Without clear and neutral information, farmers may unknowingly agree to a long-term obligation that has uncertain financial returns. The new initiative aims to provide a transparent certification process to help farmers make more informed decisions. The first phase is set to launch this fall. The NCGA is also working to secure additional funding from ag businesses and industry groups. Broad support, they say, will improve transparency and reduce the risk as carbon markets continue to grow. Ag stakeholders interested in promoting clarity in the carbon space are encouraged to participate. So you can get more information by emailing Todd Jansen at jansen@aglaw.us, JANZEN @aglaw.us for more information.
Yeah, sounds like a good resource for farmers who want to navigate that but don't really know how to jump in or where to start. This week, we also had a great opportunity to sit down with Pat Hord, who is an Ohio pork producer and vice president of the National Pork Producers Council. He recently testified before the Ag House Committee on the implications of California's Prop 12, which we have covered a lot and have been looking at very closely. We'll dive into that conversation now.
Well, Jacie, we talked cattle and beef production last week, so for our tried and true listeners that hang out with us every week, it's now time to talk pork. Our pleasure to have Pat Hord, NPPC Board Vice President and an Ohio pork producer, to join us. Welcome, Pat.
Yeah.
Looks like you're on the road. Where are we headed to today?
Well, we're heading to the Ohio State Fair later. Got a couple appointments before then, but we're heading there to serve pork at the Ohio State Fair. So our team, we staff a day and man the pork tents, and so that's what's happening today.
That's great. Well, for our listeners, why don't you tell them a little bit about what that family farm of yours looks like?
We have a swine farrow to finish operation that has animals. We're headquartered in Ohio. We have some animals in other states, but the main hub is in Ohio. And we have row crops, so we farm, and then as well as we have some cattle. That's a little bit about our business.
You sharing that, Jacie. That's a very good person to talk about the topic we've got today.
Yeah, and it's great to hear about your role within your own family farm, but can you talk about what you do with the NPPC?
Yeah, sure. So I'm currently the vice president of the National Pork Producers Council. That entails, NPPC and advocating for public policy in items that are in the pork industry.
And you were taking your spot in that role as well as a producer hat all the way to Washington this week, correct? You got to testify in front of the House Ag Committee.
Yep, I sure did. Yeah, that was an interesting process I've not had the opportunity to do before, so it was interesting.
For those that haven't had that opportunity, can you tell us a little bit about how that goes?
Yeah, they invited G.T. Thompson invited myself to speak on behalf of the U.S. pork producers in the topic of Prop 12. There was 5 of us that were, maybe 6, I think 5. 5 of us were on a panel, and we were able to give an opening oral testimony, and then we were able to then the congressman, and congresswoman that were part of the House Ag Committee had the ability to ask us questions, or they could make their own statement about what they thought of it. And so those parts that started about 10 and ended around 1 o'clock, so it was about 3 hours.
Talking about Prop 12, where are we at with that? And I also researched a little bit and found it interesting how your farm is Prop 12 compliant. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so currently the National Pork Producers Council's position on Prop 12 is that we would like to see that go away, and mainly around the fact that the risk is for us is the patchwork of states, and so our challenge is that what we have is there's 0.1% of the pigs that are raised in California, and they are mandating all the pork that comes in, the uncooked pork that comes into California. They are mandating that it has to meet their spec. So in a roundabout way, it's one thing, and the discussion around what G.T. Thompson's fix is for this in the Farm Bill would allow states to continue to regulate their own selves. So if for example, in Ohio, we about 15 years ago created a standard in Ohio, and it basically was a group housing standard. So we had to transition to that, but we didn't require that all pork consumed in the state met that requirement. It was just a housing requirement for Ohio producers. And so that is an example of what would continue to be able to be happening with the fix of Congressman Thompson.
Yeah, it's interesting that you have a different perspective than some, because your facilities are Prop 12 compliant. So you can talk firsthand as to what that expense was that your family incurred, what the results have been. Tell us a little bit about how you use that as perspective.
Yeah, so we have about 10% of our sows that would be Prop 12 compliant, so not all of them. So we've, over the last couple of years, have worked on, we had one new facility, and then one that was remodeled, actually 2 that were remodeled, and then one that's not currently being, even though it's capable to be Prop 12 compliant, is not being used because there's not enough. We've not found an additional need for that, but we were remodeling the barn and we didn't really know what to build. And so we said, well, maybe we just make it that in case we need to do that in the future. And so therein lies the challenge that you have for pork producers is we really don't know what to build. We don't know what financial, and so for me and my operation, our number one objective is to eliminate the patchwork of states so that we don't, essentially, we could have 50 different states saying that they want their pork raised a certain way, or you could extrapolate this out. This could be anything. Pork happens to be the tip of the spear, but it could be, could be the way they want cattle raised. It could be poultry. It could be dairy. It could be anything. And so, essentially, what we're advocating on behalf of, from MPPC's standpoint, is that we fix the idea that one state can force producers in another state to raise animals in a certain way. We would prefer that to happen as a market-based, where there's a basically let the capital markets, so to speak, work, and if there's a demand, and if a retailer wants a certain thing, or then send the signals back through the process and through us and say, hey, yeah, we would really like to have this. Okay, so we'll convert. So that's kind of, because California standards weren't scientific, they were arbitrary, and they were developed without the assistance of veterinarians or pork producers or food safety experts. And so therein lies the challenge. It's just hard to have a something like that come down from a state that wasn't developed through sound science.
Some interesting insight there, Pat. But can you tell us a little bit more about the Save Our Bacon Act that's being introduced in Washington, D.C., and how it's going to help pork producers?
Yeah, so Congresswoman Hinson from Iowa introduced the Save Our Bacon bill, and I think essentially it, if I understand it right, I read through it briefly over the last evening just to try to familiarize myself. But I think what it says, I'm not a lawyer or I'm a big farmer, but what I thought it said is essentially the same thing that GT is in his fix in the Farm Bill would be the same thing, essentially not what I just described, not allowing a patchwork of states to where there's multiple different specifications that could be applied for each state.
Yeah, well, Pat, our Michelle grabbed a couple of statistics I just kind of want to wrap the interview up with before asking how pork producers and those that support the cause can get more involved with. Is California eats 13% of the U.S. pork that is produced. However, their state only produces 1% of the pork supply. But what I found, Jacie, the most interesting is since Prop 12 has been put into place, according to this article, the prices of bacon are up 16%, pork loins are up 41%. Overall, pork products are 20% higher than before Prop 12 took effect, and that is hurt total sales volume. So Californians are spending more to consume pork, but it's less than they were before. So Pat, obviously this is a big issue. If we've got listeners and producers that want to get their voice shared, how best do they do that?
Well, I would encourage them to reach out to their respective representatives and let them know that they support having a farm bill. It's really important that we get a farm bill. I know that there was a lot of things that were addressed in the big beautiful bill, but we really need a farm bill, and I think one in this area would help us. Obviously, communicate that to your representatives so that they know how you feel about that, and please reach out to MPPC, or if they have any further questions about any of this, that would be great.
We always appreciate our guests and appreciate, especially today, Pat's time for that conversation. But now let's take a look at StoneX's fertilizer media update that got dropped yesterday. The urea markets are tightening again as India issues a new tender for 2 million metric tons. Offers due to expire August 4th must remain valid through August 8th, with shipments by September 22nd. India has just secured another 1.5 million tons in its last round, and many in the market hoped for a pause to cease the price pressure, but now that seems unlikely. Chinese urea exports will remain a wild card, though the Chinese have raised their export quota from 2 to 3 million tons. Only 77,000 tons have been shipped so far this year. Exports typically slow down from November to December, meaning China would need to ship a majority of its quota between now and October. But uncertainty around the Chinese government controls makes buyers hesitant. Phosphate demand in India stays strong, but improved stockpiles and price caps are slowing purchases. A favorable monsoon could push demand higher, but the timing for that remains unclear. Here in North America, phosphate prices remain high relative to grain values. Some hope rising grain prices will help, but that could also push phosphate prices up again. Global supply remains tight, 5 countries controlling nearly 90% of phosphate exports, and most will be facing U.S. tariffs. This includes Morocco, China, Russia, and Saudi Arabia. U.S. production is limited. Imports from Saudi Arabia are unlikely unless prices rise enough to cover that 10% tariff. The biggest potash news this week comes from Canada. BHP has delayed its new Jansen mine project. Stage 1, originally set to begin in 2026, will now be pushed back to the middle of 27. Stage 2 is now delayed till 2031. The project was expected to bring new supply and competition to the market, which would benefit buyers, of course, but cost overruns and strong supply outlook appear to be behind on that delay. Otherwise, potash markets remain relatively quiet. So, what else do we have for the rest of this episode?
I think that's going to wrap it up. No markets this week. I didn't prepare any. Delaney's gone. So I think
that's right.
Wrap it up.
You'll have to hit your local source to be able to check what's been happening there, and we will get an update from Delaney on those next week. So I appreciate you stepping in, Jacie. Always fun to have you be a part of this, listeners. We always appreciate you as well. Jumping on and listening to our headline updates. Again, guests like today are here because you suggested them. Please send those in. And again, share this with your friends and family. But Jacie, what do you say for today? Should we let the listeners go?
Let's let them go.